Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Crossover U podcast brought to you as always on the Crossover channel. My name's Kanaye. I'm joined again with Josh, and we have a lot of college hoops to talk about today. Really exciting last few weeks it's been. Just an absolute gauntlet that's been conference play, so many teams, just a lot of cannibalism to go around, especially in the bigger conferences like the Big 12, the SEC, and it's been really fun to watch. Just a great season so far, really. But yeah, we got some teams we want to talk about today that have particularly caught our eye, especially recently. And we'll also get into a little bit of some of our Coach of the Year takes, who we think is in the race for winning Coach of the Year. But yeah, I think we both want to start with the team that's really kind of caught in the attention nationally as of late, with Arizona being only having one loss so far in conference play. They just picked up their eighth win in the Big 12 thanks to Caleb Love sinking that half court shot to send it to OT, and then two straight threes in OT helped them take down number three Iowa State. And I mean, that's probably one of the best games I've seen in a long time outside of, I mean, I guess if we're not counting the Houston Kansas game, but I mean, it was a great game wire to wire. So I'll throw it to you first, Josh. Just your any immediate takeaways you have about Arizona or that game, Caleb Love, anything in general.
I mean, we both saw the game, obviously in separate uh, places, but I mean, it really just puts together how much Arizona's been through. We thought they were done. We thought they
Yeah,
were done after their like eighth game of the year. We didn't even get to think about what a Big 12 Arizona would be, and we're looking at them right now. A Big 12 Arizona is even better than they were in the Pac 12, which says a
yeah,
lot because the Pac 12 was still a very hard conference to be in. And Arizona's probably worked their way back into the AP poll, assuming they
yeah.
can continue up for the rest of the week, which they probably
Yeah,
should.
they finished the week strong. I don't see why they can't be in the bottom part of that AP poll. I mean, Tommy Lloyd's finally, I think, gotten guys to kind of buy into what they want to do. Carter Bryant's played really well as of late. Uh, Trey Townsend's kind of starting to come along a little bit more. I think a lot of people, including myself, thought he was going to be a little bit better than what he has been to start the year, but he's starting to show some flashes. KG Lewis has been good. And I mean, yeah, Caleb Love, again, that's a guy who's going to be up and down. But when he's hitting shots, he's really good player,
I mean,
which
you
kind of,
saw it.
yeah,
You saw
right.
in that game too. Like before he made the buzzer beater, he was like 1 for 9 on his threes,
One for
and then
11 from three before he
immediately,
made it.
and then he immediately follows up by making three threes, including the
Yeah.
game, the game tying buzzer beater.
And just, I don't understand Iowa State's defensive game plan on Love in OT. I mean, that's a guy who just hit a half court shot, a player who's really relying on hot streaks. And if he's able to see the ball through the net, and that's a guy you can give no space after letting him make a half court shot, because you know his confidence is going to be through the roof and he's going to be ready to pull at any given moment. So I had Iowa State money line, so I'm a little that was a tough watch, but I was just like thinking to myself, like, what are they doing in that OT period? But that's no knock on Iowa State. They played really well this year. They're a great defensive team normally. But yeah, so speaking of Love, I kind of want to talk about it a little bit. To me, I think he's been one of the most polarizing players since he's gotten into college, just nationally, just with the storylines. I mean, that rough start he had his freshman year, and then that deep tournament run. They made it to the Natty, lost to Kansas, but he had that moment where he ends Coach K's career knocking down that clutch three pointer against Duke. And then another following that another bad year. Kind of a little bit of some beef maybe between him and RJ Davis. I don't know how much of that was legit and how much of that was just media created. But yeah, he ended up transferring to Arizona, where he played at an All American level last year, was first team All Pac 12, and then this year been a little bit down. But I'd say just a few nights ago he had another signature moment making that half court shot. So I kind of want to ask the question: how do you think Caleb Love is going to be remembered?
Honestly, in the same way you've put it, very controversial. He had an insane high and an insane low. Like it definitely puts him up to be in the NBA, for example, a type of player that if drafted, which I think he'll be in the later second rounds, a possible role player at times, but also could blossom into a star given his performances. The only issue though is he's very inefficient and very inconsistent. And the fact that now in his fifth year, he's still facing these issues more now than ever. It's kind of his biggest reason as to why for example, people aren't really considering him in draft boards. And if anything, he should have taken the opportunity to and gotten drafted in 2022 when he had the best odds. Instead, he chose to go back the college route, which is still a fair route and could have put him in a better position given the fact that North Carolina was ranked number one walking into the 2023 season. Obviously, that didn't pan out. Obviously, that made things worse, and transferring to Arizona didn't really do anything better. But his play style is still amazing. Like, this is a top 20 all-time 2000s player, without a doubt, in my opinion. The way he's just been a character in the college basketball universe for the past, honestly, since he's been a freshman, really shows to just the level of influence he has. I do hope he gets drafted, like I said before, but I think like going ahead into the future, Caleb Love's name will be mentioned less and less. It already is not mentioned that much now,
Yeah.
and it's only being brought up because of this game alone, truthfully.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely with you where I think he should have probably stayed in the draft after they went on that run to the national championship with North Carolina. I thought he probably had his best chance to get drafted after the season. And while I do think he should have gone to the NBA then, I do have a lot of respect for guys who do choose to come back to school just because it's nice to see kind of the household names return and continue to have an impact on the sport and kind of drive it forward. I think a lot of that has to do with the brand that North Carolina is. I know Armando Baycott's talked about it a lot, where he probably doesn't make the NIL money he did without going on that run in 2022, I think it was, and playing in North Carolina. But yeah, I do respect how he stayed in college. I think he probably should have stayed in the draft last year. I don't think coming back really, as of right now, outside of that game, isn't really helping his chances. His numbers are down from last year. But that's a guy who I think his game is better suited for the NBA than it is college, which kind of contributes to my questions about why he hasn't legitimately tested the waters more seriously than he has and when he has entered the combine. But, that's a player who I have a lot of respect for. Just, again, being a household name, staying in school for 5 years, and having moments like he did when he made that shot against Duke, or just the other night making that half-court shot against Iowa State. But yeah, he's a good player when he's making shots. And I think a lot of his legacy is going to be pending on how Arizona plays the rest of the season and how they do in the tournament. Because I think they're on a trajectory to make it as of right now. But yeah, I think that's a player who is definitely going to continue to be polarizing how people remember him. But I definitely think I'm going to remember him for, of course, ending Coach K's career. That was pretty nice to see. And then, ruining my parlay the other night.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really the most you can put to it. And it does kind of suck because Caleb has such a great upside, as I've said before, but we're not seeing it. I think the big thing for me as to why he has been drafted is because of the problems with his upside and that he hasn't shown it enough that NBA scouts have taken him in. I think it's a huge risk for most scouts to take him in. I think one probably will. They'll see something in him that not everyone does, and I think that's that's probably the best route for him. But overall, at least he's keeping Arizona on top, and they're a team that's likely a 5 seed, if even, going to the tournament now, and that might get even better over in the years. So his place in the NCAA still maintains itself, but every year gets slightly worse, I feel. And I'm glad this is his last year. It should have been last year. I agree with you on that. But I think wrap it up, get to the Sweet 16 even, and get drafted and see where your life goes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a guy who could maybe carve out a role as a spark plug off the bench, be instant offense when he's able to hit shots for an NBA team. But, I mean, I think that pretty much covers everything we have about Caleb Love in Arizona. So just transitioning to the next team that's really caught our eyes lately is Vanderbilt has played really, really well. 2 top 10 wins in the last week and a half. They beat Tennessee and they beat Kentucky. They've gotten some great play from AJ Hogard and my mistake. Tyler Nichols shot the ball really well. I was forgetting his name. He made that really big shot against Kentucky late in the game, kind of the dagger. But yeah, the Vandy's been rolling. They played really well. They played up to the level of competition they've played so far in the SEC, and there's definitely some noise out in out in Tennessee right now.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean,
Yeah,
if there's anything that's really surprising me, or actually not even surprising me, I knew Mike Biden would be a good coach, and I knew AJ Hoger was like the best transfer that Vanderbilt could have gotten.
yeah,
Sometimes even better than like Chaz Lanier, for example, that Tennessee has gotten. I wouldn't put Tennessee over their rival, but even then, Vanderbilt has shown that they can take down the big dogs. Yes, it's at home, but even then, they still prove strong. They have a lot more SEC play to go if they want to keep that
right.
ranking. But as of right now, they're playing the best basketball that Vanderbilt has played in almost a decade now. And it's starting to come to fruition in the first year of Mark's coaching time. And I think it's really
Yeah,
looking great for. It's just looking great. Like I'm very happy to see it. Anchor down all the way, I guess.
yeah. I mean, Vandy's played really well. I mean, just football and basketball too. They're proving they're not a pushover in the SEC anymore.
It's finally their
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I mean, they got a great crowd against Kentucky. Their court is set up so weirdly though. I don't understand why the benches are on the baseline rather
I
than the
think it's to
sideline.
prevent
Um,
court storing, but it just never works out because
it
they just
could
push
be,
them anyway.
yeah. Definitely strange, but maybe plays to an advantage, but for them. But yeah, Vandy's played really well. I think AJ Hogard. A lot of people have been wanting him to be a little bit better than what he's shown in his time playing in college. But I think this year he's really starting to kind of elevate his game and get to the type of player that a lot of people, including myself, thought he was going to be for a long time.
I know it is nice to see that too because I did enjoy him in Michigan State, but he never found a fit. He never found a fit in Michigan State. And he
Right.
walks to Vanderbilt like this is totally new for him. I really didn't know what he was going to do, but I thought he had a great upside there as well. And he's shown it so prolifically. Like without AJ Hogarth particularly, but even with everybody else, the team wouldn't be anywhere near as good. And I think that I definitely got to give it to Mark Biden. He's come in and completely changed the atmosphere at Vanderbilt.
Yeah. I mean, even in the late stretch of that Kentucky game, I think he fully outcoached Mark Pope. Again, a little bit of blame does go to the Kentucky players. They turned the ball over. I want to say 3 or 4 times in the final 2 minutes
Oh,
of the
that
game.
was horrific to watch.
It was bad, the
Yeah,
late game execution. But yeah, like you mentioned, Mark's coached it. I mean, he's coached his butt off. He's done really well. Um, yeah, again, it's nice to see Vandy. I mean, it's just insane how good the SEC is this year. There's like really no teams that you can go in and play your B or C game. You have to come out with your A game every night in the SEC.
I mean, it definitely shows like South Carolina's putting AP teams at
Right.
risk of losing. There's 10 ranked AP teams right now. 10 of them.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can fathom that as well. And it's not even like they're stretching at the backcourt. We have one, three, like everything in between. It's like you cross over and you just see an SEC team. Like it's
Right.
impossible to not have a ranked SEC matchup every time an SEC team plays. Almost,
Yeah.
almost.
I mean, even a few weeks back, we looked at ESPN's bracketology a little bit, or maybe we mentioned it. I think they had 13 teams in the SEC making the tournament, and
They still
that
do.
sounded crazy at the time. Yeah, they still do. It sounds crazy, but it legitimately might happen. It really could. Just the SEC has been amazing this year. It really is the best conference in the country right now.
They're definitely showing it well. Um, would you like to move up to the
Yeah,
next?
yeah. Next team, we have to talk about the St. John's Red Storm. They've been cruising so far in Big East play. They currently are number one in the Big East standings. They only have one loss in Big East play so far, and I mean they've played really well under Rick Pitino in year two. And I think that's just what happens. You get a coach like Rick Pitino. Last year, he didn't necessarily have the team that he wanted. This year, they gave him the money to go out and build the team he wanted. And outside of not really having a true knockdown shooter, I mean, the toughness, physicality, their defense, all that put together, they've gone down big in some games, but their fight has just been more than whoever they're playing. Like in that Xavier game last week, I want to say they went down 17 at one point
16,
and
but even then,
16.
just
Yeah,
they have. I think they right now lead the league in 15 plus point comebacks, which is
yeah.
is a wild stat. But
It's
if
crazy for the Big East. Like that's you don't see that, and it's really crazy to see.
I mean, it also just shows how quickly St. John's can pop off with Patino, or just Patino in general. He has
Yeah,
this ability to just immediately turn into an amazing coach at any point, regardless of where he's ever been. And it shows with St. John's. Obviously, they struggled last year. They almost made the tournament, but were just unfortunately just missed out.
They should have
This
made the
year,
tournament,
I know they
but
definitely should have. That I agree with 100%. But this is the year that everything's piecing together. They have an incredible opportunity to come back and win the Big East overall, like just straight up on its own. They're 15th in the AP poll. They've just come out of nowhere almost recently. But if you've been keeping track of them, even since their non-conference games where they were doing quite all right and had some, unfortunate losses, I'll admit that is true. But when you really come back to it, St. John's is the team to beat in the Big East.
yeah,
Yes, Marquette's good. Yes, UConn has some upsides depending on how they play on the given days. Yes, Xavier can play well, but it's really, really just St. John's at this point that I'm feeling
yeah,
is leading this pack for the Big East, and they've
yeah,
they've done
for
so
sure.
well.
Yeah, and I mean, just like the guys they have this year. I mean, I when I saw the Kadari Richmond transfer, I knew that was a perfect fit for Rick Pitino. He's the perfect Rick Pitino guard, just with what he's able to do on defense and also handling the ball. And that's a guy who, I mean, you see how talented he is, and like his ability to take over games. I mean, he was maybe one of four guys last year who could single handedly go out and win you a game on his own for what he did with Seton Hall. And it just to me, it's there's always been effort concerns with Kadari Richmond, and you just think about. I always think about just if he were to put in the work and the effort that I think a lot of coaches like Boeheim, Shaheen, and even Rick at times he's talked about it. Just want to see more out of Kadari Richmond. If he did that, just how good of a player he could be, even more than what he is right now. But
Oh
again,
no, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
he still was named a midseason All American, I believe, on the third team. I want to say by I want to say it was a Sporting News that put that out.
Yeah,
But
I know what
yeah,
you're referencing. I think he's definitely shown up recently. He wasn't really good to start the year. He's played a lot better recently, and he's filling in at the perfect moment. So I know Deion Smith has had some injury issues. I know
right,
KJ Lewis has had some like iffy games here and there, but the team is playing a lot stronger. The defense is getting better. The offense is getting far better. The team is succeeding at just the right moment to really come up in the AP poll and in the Big East. And now's the time to grab a top 5 seed and to walk in to the Final Four
right,
because that's right now I think the goal for Patino. At least
yeah.
I think it's the Final Four.
I mean, like you mentioned, Devin Smith, he's dealt with injury problems recently, and St. John's played so well. And once they get him back, and he's like fully healthy, I mean, that's just going to make him even better. And
Oh,
RD Lewis has played good, even in a game where he wasn't shooting well in the whole first, really the like 3 quarters of the game against Xavier. He turned it around enough and late stretches of that game, hit some really big shots, was able to get to the basket. And even they even have guys who could break out like a Brady Dunlap off the bench who could come in and hit shots because they need a guy to emerge as a knockdown
Oh yeah,
shooter.
Dunlap has those opportunities as well. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really a deep team. I think the biggest thing for St. John's is that while yes, last year's team was strong, at least in the front court, the depth that St. John's is producing right now is what's keeping them going because you can really just play
right.
off anybody, which I think is just the
Yeah,
biggest. I think that's the biggest upside for them. But
yeah. I mean,
to
I
move,
definitely think. Oh, go ahead.
like to move. You can finish your statement, but
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know you mentioned their goal should be a Final Four. I mean, I think the way they're playing right now, yeah, I don't hate that, but I think going into the year, their goal was to get their first tournament win since what was it, 2000,
if
and
I'm not wrong, it might be even maybe a little bit later. But
uh huh. But
even then,
yeah, I
that's
mean, I
that's
think
still
this is the
probably
year
quite
they do
early.
get that win. They will win a tournament game.
They should. They should.
I think this is the year St. John's finally gets that tournament win, and I think they could go even deeper than that. They definitely have Final Four upside for sure. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything we had about Rick Pitino and his squad. So just to talk a little bit about the next team that's really caught our attention is Michigan State, just how they've played so far. Only 2 losses, I believe, up to this point. And, Izzo's got his squad rolling. I know Izzo's definitely motivated. I think he understands he doesn't have much time coaching left in his career. So he's definitely going all out. And his team has played really well. It feels like almost every other night, every other day, you're seeing a Cohen Carr highlight dunk
Oh yes,
on
yes. I
social
mean,
media.
the team unfortunately has no 3-point shooting. Everyone knows
Right.
that, but they're playing at a level that ignores that. completely north. They're undefeated in conference. They really haven't shown any weaknesses. They haven't played the best competition, I'll admit, but they have had some good wins. The Illinois win is probably the best one so far.
Right.
And it really was a compiling effort. I knew the team was good based off their non-conference play, but when they got into the conference, they've made the Big Ten their little plaything,
Yeah.
truthfully. And Michigan State's looking to do what what Izzo has been looking to do for the longest time: make it back to the Final Four, make it back to the Natty, do everything they can. And this might be that year, especially if it's last year. I think it definitely pushes him further. Maybe this is why they're doing so well,
Right.
but they feel like most likely the team most likely win the Big Ten right now. That's what I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I might throw Purdue in there. Illinois has definitely got an argument, but I mean, Michigan State's looks so well. Jaden
They feel like
Adams
the
played
front runner, if
well.
anything.
Jackson Kohler's a solid contributor. Cohen Carr has definitely come along. Again, I mentioned the dunks you see all the time, but even outside of that, he's playing good defense. He's getting out in transition, which I talked about in a lot earlier in the season. I wanted to see Michigan State try to get more up tempo to allow guys like Cohen Carr to be able to get going, and they've done it. They played really well.
I think it's really the big thing, and it's also just been how Izzo's been playing his players.
Right.
Putting Frankie Fiddle on the bench was a very controversial move, but it worked out perfectly for him. I think giving Cohen Carr more minutes has been the solid thing, and it's been working the team around, particularly with the rotation. That's given Michigan State this like fresh play where considerably last year the team felt good. It had a very similar roster, but the depth wasn't showing, and I think that's what really killed them at the end of the day.
Right.
And this year, the depth is actually working, and I think
Yeah.
that's keeping Michigan State in the fight for quite a while. I would say that they have a really good shot.
Yeah. I mean, the depth is definitely there this year compared to last, and I mean, as of right now, they're seventh in the AP poll. I don't see why they can't make a run at a one seed, depending on how they finish in the Big Ten.
Same, same.
They definitely can grab a one seed, and they definitely have Final Four upside. I think with you can never count out Izzo. I mean, he's always going to be a threat to go on a deep run in March.
No, I definitely agree with you.
But unless you had any other notes on Michigan State, no, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I think that kind of moves on to the last team that we'd like to talk about today, which is Louisville. Pat Kelsey. That's the main gist here. He's probably my pick for Coach of the Year right now, which we're going to talk about very shortly. But the way Louisville's played, Pat Kelsey's completely transformed the program. They were really disappointing last year, and we thought maybe at the beginning of this year there's going to be a little bit of the same, but they've had guys completely turn around. I mean, Chucky Hepburn, he's played so well. Rain Smith has shot the ball incredibly. They're getting contributions from Terrence Edwards Jr., who was a guy who I thought probably would be a lot better earlier on, but he's played well as of late. And I mean, they're rolling right now. They're the hottest team, I'd argue, in the country currently.
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean, Chuck Hepburn's been playing he's had the best career of his entire time.
Yeah,
Like I've seen him in Wisconsin, I've seen him at St. John's. This is his best career.
for sure.
Or this is his best year, I should say. I don't know if he played St. John's, my bad. That was AG Store.
Yeah,
But
store.
fellow Wisconsinite,
Right,
my
right.
bad. But even then, Pat Kelsey's done something that I mean only Mark Pope could really recreate, which is
Right.
kind of funny to think about. And he's put Louisville back in the map, and it's so fun. I'm so happy that we're finally back in this era of time where both Kentucky teams are good. They've already had more wins than they had in the last 2 years, which is just
Right.
crazy to think
I
about.
know.
Louisville was
Incredible.
completely out of everyone's minds. They were seen as a last place team in the ACC every single year. They couldn't get even a single home win in conference at times. And now it's the complete opposite. They're ranked. They're the only team competing with Duke in the ACC. They feel strong. They feel like a team that can go to the second weekend, if anything. And this is the starting point. This is the starting point of what could be an incredibly strong rebuilding journey for the Cardinals.
Right.
And I'm excited to see them play Kentucky later
Yeah.
on. I hope there's some sort of game in the tournament even. I think it'd be very, very entertaining to say the least. I think they're putting the conversation back in again if Louisville is the better team. I still think it's Kentucky by a lot. If you're going to
Yeah.
ask me right now, not to annoy the Kentucky fans that are watching,
Right.
Kentucky is still by far the better team. But Louisville's time has come again, and I think we're
Yeah.
ready to see Pat Kelsey go to work.
Yeah, I mean it's so good to see this Louisville Kentucky rivalry starting to reemerge. I mean that was just such a great rivalry for years, and it didn't stay, and it's becoming that again. I know Louisville dropped that game at Rupp Arena, but once Kentucky takes the travel over to the Yum Center, it's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun one. Pat
Oh,
Kelsey.
I agree
He's
with you.
I mean, some people are even labeling Louisville as America's team right now, and I don't hate it. I mean, Kelsey's
I don't
brought
hate
so
it
much
either.
energy. Kelsey brought so much energy to this team, the program, the fans, and it's great to see. I mean, even earlier in the year, I said there's videos of him walking around Louisville's campus, telling that hyping up the students, telling them to get out to the Yum Center to come watch him play, and it was maybe a little corny in the moment, but I mean, hey, he's done a great job, and it's looking back on it, I love the energy from Kelsey, and he's you see the videos of him getting fired up in the locker room with his players after their wins, and it's so they're a fun team. I'm really excited to watch them.
Oh, easily, easily.
Yeah,
They feel like they've once again come out of nowhere. It feels like we've seen this story before too. Like it's another Vanderbilt, it's another like per se team that's just come onto the market that
right.
wasn't good for the longest time and have now filled in the role that we were asking them to fill in for. And like, is there really much else to say? We get to see a good Louisville team. We haven't
Right.
seen that in so long. I wasn't around for that even to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And now and we're also just making the ACC like feel a little bit better. I mean, Clemson was good for a while, Pitt was good for a while, but they've kind of slumped off for a bit. We know Wake Forest has come back to some extent, but it's really just been Duke's conference
Right.
for the past month or so. I think Louisville challenges that slightly. They don't win it, obviously, but they get number two. I feel
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to see another ACC opponent emerge outside of Duke, because the Dukes really have had their way in conference play this year, and that they're even off recording, you mentioned that they definitely look like they could go undefeated in conference play, and I don't disagree with you.
I don't. I personally think that right now Duke. I mean, this is definitely a hot take for y'all. I think Duke goes undefeated in conference. I
Yeah,
just don't see it being a scenario where they lose a game at
yeah.
this
I mean,
point.
I don't think
They've
that
had
take
their.
at all.
I know I mean, they've had their hardest game already when Wake Forest. I
Right.
felt, and the hardest game they really have up ahead is at Chapel Hill or at Clemson, and I think they can both win those games pretty
Yeah,
easily.
definitely.
So
Yeah, I mean, Duke's rolling, but Louisville, I mean, Pat Kelsey, my pick for coach of the year, kind of transitioning now into the next segment about some names you're going to throw out there who are leading candidates, we'd say, in the coach of the year race. I think my pick's Pat Kelsey. Yours, I think you said was Pat Kelsey too. Um,
I'm stuck between Pat Kelsey and Bruce Pearl.
Bruce Pearl, fair.
If Auburn stays the way they are, and they're able to get that number one seed overall, I'd give it to Bruce Pearl. There's really nothing else in the world that would make me stop it. I like Pat Kelsey. Don't get me wrong; he's done amazing. I just feel as though going from where Auburn was last year, which was still good, but a four seed, and it was a first round exit to Yale, to the best team we've seen in SEC history since like Kentucky from 2012, by per se. The best team. It's hard to not give Bruce Pearl his flowers, and he's tried so hard for this. He's always tried to be better than Alabama has been, and this is the year that I think Auburn makes the hump over Bama in the
Yeah,
college basketball scene, at
yeah.
least.
I mean, yeah, no, I don't hate that. It's hard to argue with. I mean, Bruce Pearl, just what Auburn's done this year has been incredible. They're more like we talked about. They're more of a basketball school right now than they are a football.
Which is
Um,
quite funny, yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
just
that's kind of the SEC's turning
yeah,
into.
and I do think you definitely have to give Bruce Pearl bonus points for just how well his team had played without Broom for the time he was out with the ankle injury. I mean, there was almost little to no drop off in play and how they performed. They had guys step up like Todd Pettiford, who they
Definitely,
don't. I
definitely
don't
stepped
understand
up.
how Pettiford's not been talked about more in freshman of the year race. I understand that's kind of flags to lose, but he's played so well. But yeah, like you mentioned, Bruce Pro, I think he's really, really motivated. He wants this. He wants to get back to a Final Four. And yeah, this is probably going to be his best chance to win a national championship, possibly through his entire career. So I think he wants to get it all this year. And winning coach of the year would be a step in the right direction for sure. But yeah, it's hard to argue with Bruce Pearl. think another name I'd maybe throw in there. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Yeah, I'll throw it to you. I'm trying to remember who I was talking about pre-recording.
I know off camera we talked about Todd Golden from
Oh yeah, Todd
Florida.
Gurley, right?
I think he's definitely good. The controversies are putting me off, and the fact that Florida will probably not win the SEC
Right.
is probably what would keep him away from it. Florida's done great. I knew they were going to be a good team. I'm still putting them in my Final Four. I'm very happy that I had that as my preseason prediction. Big pat on the back for me still if I want
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
that.
I
But
thought it was a good take.
I think like keeping in the SEC, I like to give it to Buzz in Texas A&M. They've done great. Texas A&M looks like another team that can make it pretty far. We were talking about Mike Biden from Vanderbilt. Great opportunities there for him. I really like seeing just these like young coaches come into the market and just change schools entirely. Um, and keep on the subject of what we talked about, Patino's done great. St. John's, there's
Right.
consideration for him. I like Shaka Smart still. I think he's getting underrated like he always is. Do you see anybody else really?
Yeah, I finally came back to me. Darian DeVries at West
Ooh,
Virginia.
yes, it's a great one.
He's brought back West Virginia basketball. Nice to see. I mean, it's college basketball is better when West Virginia is good. And I mean, just the job he's done. I mean, he went into Fog Allen Fieldhouse, got that win without his two best players. Javon Smalls played so well for DeVries, and of course, his son Tucker has been great too. Again, it's kind of that's really a theme with the. I feel like this Coach of the Year race, just coaches coming in and revitalizing and bringing back programs that were once really good and kind of are starting to emerge once again. Mark Pope at Kentucky, I think, is definitely a name
Yeah,
that,
Mark Pope deserves
yeah,
so much love. I
right,
think also just making something out of nothing is a big deal. I look at Illinois and Wisconsin, Greg Gard in particular. I should say no offense to what's going on Brad Underwood, but Greg Gard is getting once again overlooked in the Big Ten in terms of coaching.
right,
And he just made another team out of nothing.
yeah,
Really, I don't know how to put it. And Brad Underwood getting Jack Kachonis and Humerturus together,
right,
great work for him. He's leading a team that was supposed to be towards the bottom of the Big Ten, in my opinion, for most of the preseason. And if anything, it's really just going to show their upsides as coaches and why they should be considered for this award. And I think that there really is just so much to go off of how many good coaches there have been recently. It does kind of suck too when you do look about the other coaches that have always been good. Nate Oates has been just doing his dominant work like he always
right,
has. Matt Painter's been doing great at Purdue, and I gotta obviously give them respect. But when we do look at obviously Coach of the Year awards, it's the guys that made nothing into something that we're really
yeah,
seeing right now, and there's so many of those coaches. I would
right.
say,
I mean, kind of completely conflicting what you just said. I mean, there's guys who have been at programs that we knew were going to be good going into the year that I think have lived up and maybe even exceeded expectations a little bit. I mean, I'm not happy I'm throwing his name in there, but John Shire, he's done a great job with Duke. I think, again, this is a really, really talented team, but he put it together. I mean, he's probably the best recruiter in the country right now, I'd have to say. And the way he's played his freshman, outside of a few late game blunders early in the season, they've rolled through ACC play so far. I'd even throw TJ Otzelberger from Iowa State. I know that lost to Arizona was not a good one, but he's played. I mean, even now he's brought Curtis Jones from off the bench to starting, and he hasn't been great. As I mean, he's done well starting, but maybe not as much as off the bench. But even still, I mean, they just what he's done with Iowa State in that program over the last two seasons is really, really, I mean, cool to see. He's really
definitely.
brought that
And
team, brought that program to the upper tier of college basketball.
yeah. And honestly, actually, if you want to as well, I kind of want to look at the bad coaches of the year too, because there's been
Oh
quite a few
yeah,
ones that have
it's
kind of slipped
definitely
under that we got to put out. I think it's time to see the door get kicked on a couple big time coaches,
yeah.
and we're through most of the season. Who do you see getting fired?
I think number one for me is Mike Woodson. I mean,
Oh, easily.
yeah, just I thought the team he put together was really good. I mean, getting Miles Rice out the portal, Omar Ballo. I mean, I thought those two guys were going to play really well this year, and they haven't been great. There was like a brief half week to a week stretch where I thought, okay, maybe Indiana's starting to finally figure it out. But no, they're bad. They're no
Yeah,
good.
they're technically a bubble team still, but
Yeah.
that even is too little
Yeah, I
for
mean, for
a team as
Indiana, that's
notable as
not good enough.
IU.
That's not good enough in
Exactly,
Indiana.
exactly.
And just the
Um,
amount of recruits he's missed out on that were guys he needed to get, especially in-state ones. He's missed out on a lot of recruits that have gone off to other programs and played well, or a lot, maybe even guys coming in next year who he missed out on completely.
Definitely, definitely.
Um,
What do you think about Jerome Tang?
Jerome Tang, see, this is tough because I think that program's had a lot of turmoil this year. They've had guys, I forget who it was completely kicked off the team.
Oh
And
yes,
then
yes. I know who you're referring
I'm forgetting the
to.
name, but I also know Doug
Stanford
McDaniels.
transfer.
Doug McDaniels also
Doug
flirted with.
McDaniels.
He also
I mean, he
flirted
was
with leaving the team too mid-season. But I mean, yeah, I forget the whole story with that, but that was strange. And there's a lot of egos on the team. I guess he has to manage Coleman Hawkins. I think he hasn't played as well as a lot of people thought he was going
no,
to,
definitely,
including
definitely
myself
not.
this year. Yeah, Doug McDaniels said that was going to be a lot better as well. I think deep down, I'm a Jerome Tang believer. I think he's a good coach. I just think that the guys he got from the portal ended up being misses. I don't think he built as deep of a team as he thought himself, and I think everyone else did going into the year. And I think it's just unfortunate. I don't think the players panned out the way that most people, including himself, thought they were going the way they were going to.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, I mean, I never really saw Coleman Hawkins as the best player. Doug McDaniel, for
Yeah,
reference, was horrendous at Michigan. He couldn't even play most of the games due to problems he had with Michigan's like academics.
right.
And I think that just those pickups alone were bad. I'm also a drum team believer. I watched 2023 with my
Yeah,
eyes
that
open.
team
I
was so
saw
good.
his abilities. I think he stays, but he's given a big slap on the wrist for this
Right.
one because
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
it's now or
he
never.
definitely that seat's definitely going to get warm for him next year. Um, what about Kyle Neptune? What's your take on Kyle Neptune?
He's gone.
You think he's gone?
He had a. It's a lot like Mike Woodson. It's really actually it's probably the same story.
Yeah,
They looked good for a bit. They had the win against UConn. They still are a bubble team, but I mean they're on the other side of the bubble compared to IU, if anything.
right.
And I think that this season really felt like a miss opportunity because there were pieces together that were working. Eric Dixon was looking great on court. The team felt strong. There was chemistry going. The Big East felt open for a while. It still is to some extent for Villanova, but they're very likely out of it. And
Yeah.
even if they do
Um,
make it, I think it's still toast for him.
I mean, for me, going into here and just especially how they started, the losses to like St. Joseph's, I want to say it was, and I
Columbia as
was,
well.
yeah, I mean, I was worried. I was wondering, does Kyle Neptune even make it into the new year? And he did. And yeah, I mean, in the new year, they started off really strong. Eric Dixon was playing, I mean, he still is playing at arguably an All American level in terms of scoring volume. But yeah, I mean, just with the amount of money that's been given to Kyle Neptune to go out and build rosters, he hasn't really done it. I think last year a lot of people thought that they were going to be a lot better than what they were. They were really bad last year. This year, kind of this. I mean, I think most people thought Kyle Neptune failed again in the portal. He didn't use the money well that he was given, and it's a lot of money that he's getting from these Villanova donors and from the boosters they have for their NIL money for the freshmen and transfers. And he didn't really build a great squad. And they've had good moments this year, like you mentioned, the UConn win. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think Kyle Neptune ultimately probably gets the boot at the end of the year. I think.
Yeah, I definitely feel you. I mean, it does kind of suck because there was opportunities there, but Villanova needs to get back to playing the way they used to be. I do
Right.
miss those days. Everyone does
Yeah. I
probably,
mean,
unless you're not a fan. But
right. Yeah. I mean, college
even
basketball,
then,
the Big East, it's so much better
uh,
with
yeah,
when Villanova's good. And I guess just really briefly, just touch on other Big East teams that are great. I know some people called for Shaheen Holloway to get fired. I think that's completely unreasonable. That's probably they probably get the least amount of funding in terms of what they have to spend for NIL than anyone in the Big East, even maybe less than DePaul gets. I know Rick Pitino talked about it. He he indirectly said that it wasn't that Kadari Richmond didn't like playing for Shaheen or wanted to leave Seton Hall. St. John just gave him money that he couldn't turn down. And I mean, I think he even gave Seton Hall the chance to match, and they just couldn't afford to do it. And he had no problems playing for Shaheen another year, but ultimately the money talks. And I I just think it's tough because I think Shaheen is a good coach, and he hasn't been given the booster money that he needs to go and build a roster. Because I mean, Seton Hall is just not as big of a brand as some other names in the Big East, and it's tough. And I think he's done. I mean, I don't want to say an admirable job, but like I think it's unfair for people to call for his firing. I think you need to see how he does once he's given the money to go out and get players that can actually compete at a high level in the Big East. To go over to the ACC really fast. I think Autry is definitely Adrian Autry at Cuse is definitely
Yeah,
on the
he's
hot
gone.
seat. I know people last year were already talking about it, and I watched Syracuse so much growing up, and I didn't think Autry was the right guy to begin with, but I will give him credit. He was the only first-year coach in the country last year to get to the 20-win mark, and normally 20 wins is enough to get you on the bubble. It wasn't enough for Syracuse. There was 20 wins, but it wasn't a great 20 wins. I just think, yeah, he has talent. He was able to land 5-star this year. Donnie Freeman, Chapel Moore has been decent. JJ Starlin's a good player too, and I thought he had a fairly solid squad going into the year. They just I don't think it's a fault on the players. The talent's there. I think it's the coaching. I think they probably should have given it to Hopkins. I think Boeheim definitely hurt the program staying as long as he did. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I love Jim Boeheim, but I don't think it was helping Cuse at all, him staying as long as he did. They probably should have given it to Mike Hopkins, or at least told him he was next in line. He wasn't. He left the program. Um, I would have taken GMAC over Autry as well, but he obviously was third in line, and he ended up going to Siena. He's coaching there now. But I think Cuse needs to go outside the program, try to find another guy. Who that is, I have no idea. I mean, Cuse fans, they're a little delusional at times. I think some have talked about trying to throw Jay Wright the bag to draw him out of retirement. That'd be really cool to see. I doubt that ever happens. It's probably like less than a 1% chance of that happening. But he's got a really good class coming in next year. Again, if he's fired, we'll see if those commitments last. Kai and Anthony, of course, Sadiq White, who's a 5-star. I believe in McDonald's All-American as well. So they definitely have a good team next year. I think Starling might come back, but I think Autry. Syracuse needs to get back to their winning ways. I think the university's grown a little. They've definitely grown impatient. I think we've kind of seen that with their football. They fired Dino Babers. They brought on oh my God, I'm forgetting the name already. Fran Brown to turn that program around. It's crazy. We're living in a world where Syracuse football is better than their basketball program.
No,
Yeah,
definitely,
Syracuse wants to
definitely.
get back to winning, and Autry, it doesn't look like it's going to get there with Autry.
I think definitely with ACC ball in general. I mean, like you
Yeah,
look at
there's a
how
lot of coaching.
bad the ACC's been.
Yeah,
It's rough.
I mean,
It's
Hubert
rough.
Davis might even
I
he
don't know if Hubert David
definitely.
gets. I don't think it's fired. I don't think it's fired, but
Yeah, I
it's
don't
getting a
think
lot
he
closer
gets
than it should
fired
be.
either. I think the seat's definitely going to get hot. I mean, they knew their number one problem was not. They needed to address getting a big after Armando Bacot graduated, entered the draft, but
They just didn't do it
they didn't
correctly.
do it. They didn't do it. They have their bigs are so bad this year. And I legitimately thought RJ Davis' shot making ability and the improvements from Cadeau and Seth Trimble were going to be enough to win them some games, but it hasn't been.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, unless they do what they did in 2022, which
right.
hey,
Which
Hubert Davis can do that. He's the
you
one
never
coach who
know.
could do
Yeah,
that.
if RJ Davis gets hot, could happen.
I think he's pretty much out of a talk for a while, and like he'll be on Lifeline. He'll be on
Yeah,
Lifeline, but
definitely.
the ACC is just not really looking good coaching wise. Leonard Hamilton in Florida State's probably gone as well. For reference, I think there's just like a point in a time where we definitely need to like look better for coaching in the ACC.
Right.
And you got a point. I think football in the ACC is better than
Yeah. I
basketball.
mean,
It's just
it
what a
really
world we're
has.
living in.
It's crazy.
SEC football's better,
It's
and
crazy where some you can make the argument the SEC looks better in basketball and football. ACC looks better in football than basketball. It's crazy how times are changing.
I can't hate it. It's kind
Yeah,
of cool though.
yeah. It's nice to see the parity in college basketball, but it's still weird to see a year in college basketball where the SEC is dominant. And you're seeing the ACC and Big East as weak as they are right now.
Oh, easily, quite
Yeah,
easily, yeah.
but
But I think that
Yeah.
might do it for
Yeah, I
us.
think that pretty much covers everything we had for this episode. Just a quick note, if you like this podcast or any other content we have on this channel, please subscribe, like, comment your takes in the comment section below. We love seeing what you guys have to say about some of our takes. And if you have any of your own, please put them down. We try to respond to as many as we can. And also just tell other people. Getting other people to watch this stuff drives the algorithm, all helps with it, and being able to get this stuff out to more people. But yeah, that takes care of everything we have for you guys today. And until the next episode, I think we're gonna have a tier list coming up very shortly. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, until the next episode, we will see you all next time.
Keep y'all. Catch y'all.